What's a microphone? I'm nervous. No, stop that. Yeah, so my best friend since 8 years old was getting involved with drugs about 50 or 40 years ago. And I bought him a ticket, to make a long story short, to come to Hawaii, which is where I live. And he got to live a really good last 40 years of his life. You know, he made kids, and he was very grateful to be alive and to be living in Hawaii. And he just passed away a few months ago or something like that. And I'm carrying his ashes with me. So I want to put him here in Australia because I wasn't able to bring him this far. That would have been too much for my pockets. But I want to even carry some of his ashes to Brazil, which he never made it to. And I have, and I'm going to make it one more time in his honor. Check one. The check is in the mail. So I might ask you to do a little, singing with me, please. I won't ask you for any words because nobody seems to remember the words anyway. So many of my friends moved over to the other side, but they don't want to see me cry. No, they'd rather see me fly. And their good works I like to bring into this little song, because they'd rather see me singing, dancing than crying on and on. Keep on keeping on. Keep on keeping on. Love it. Love in your light keeps on keeping on. Oh, Lila, Jamila, Jose Aguiles, Ira and Ben, Timothy Leary, he's still with us. And though too close to touch, our loved ones are far from gone. Cry if you must, but don't hang on. Keep on keeping on, sweet friends and family. Keep on keeping on the other side. Wherever you are, your love and your light is still with us. Help me out singing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yo, 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 yo. Yeah, 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 yeah. Thank you. Yo, yo, yo. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yo, yo, yo. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yo, yo, yo. Alicita, my little sister, my uncle, my mama, my papa too. Your love and your light still with me. And as the wind blows, oh, as the river flows, your love and your light still grows and grows in me. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yo, yo, yo. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yo, yo, yo. Well, you clap your hands for joy for those you know who have passed away. They want to see you in joy. They don't want to see you in sadness and sorrow. Yeah, nice. I like that. One more time. Let me hear you say, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yo, yo, yo. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yo, yo, yo. Lie, 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 lie. La, 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 la. Woo! La, 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 la. La, 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 la. La, 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 la. la la la. Ooh. La 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 la. La la la. La 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 la. Alicita hermanita, mi querido tío. See, my family comes from Puerto Rico, and now I'm here with you all. And I'm grateful, and they're grateful to be alive in this song. And they'll never leave us. They always join us in a song singing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I once dreamt I was a butterfly fluttering about. And I woke up a human being, and now I'm not sure if it was a butterfly or if it was me that was dreaming to be a butterfly. But maybe a butterfly is dreaming that he's Fantuzzi.
Fantuzzi,
My pleasure.
thank
May
you.
I share about a little bit of something? Because I never get to share because I'm the musician. So you shared already. You're the music man.
Well, wait a minute. You have to wait. You have
Okay.
to wait to the next step because Louise has just come in from working down the road and she's from Wedgetail. We'd really love to share the story of what they're doing there. And then Fantuzzi and then Ray.
Hello, everybody. My name's Louise. Just recently, I stopped working at a beautiful hospice called Wedgetail Retreat. I don't know if anyone's heard of it. And I've just sort of, this was just sprung on me 5 minutes ago. So I just quickly made a couple of notes. The thing I really loved, I loved working there. One of the things is that it's a non-profit. It works with donations, and so that means there's no rules. So coming from Nimbin, I could take in medicinal cannabis cookies. I'd work with microdosing psilocybin. I could take in that, everything, anything goes. People can bring, one woman brought a horse in. People can bring their dogs. There's 4 rooms, beautiful rooms, each with its own ensuite, and there's 2 beds in those rooms. And so like families stay and people come and visibly relax and let go. So Wedgetail started in 2015. A very dynamic woman called Meredith Dennis, who was the woman coming here today. I'm not going to do her justice. She saw the need. So there's a palliative care op shop in Moolumbar, and they were doing just on a voluntary basis, people just going in and looking after people in homes, in their home. And then, so then what would happen was that when they couldn't be in their home anymore, they'd have to go to hospital. And that's often not a good transition for people that actually don't need to be in hospital. And so they recognised the need for a hospice. So got that. I'm not sure if somebody actually donated the land or some amazing thing happened like that. But anyone's welcome to go and have a look at Wedgetail. It is the most beautiful building with high ceilings, and families can. When I first started working there, I'm a registered nurse. They have a registered nurse on 24/7. And the rest is operated purely by volunteers. And those volunteers do a very extensive course. And I asked a lot of the volunteers how they liked the course. And it's a full-on 6-month course. And everybody just loved it, gained so much from it, because you learn a little bit of counselling and, you know, like a lot of things. And so the Wedgetail, it's mainly run by volunteers. But yeah, when I first started working there, I was instructed to that I am in their home. And that's what it's like. People go in and they feel it's their home. They can cook what they want, just anything. Just anybody have any questions? Because I'm not sure what else I'll say. I know.
Is it correct there are about 100 volunteers in that whole?
Yeah, there are. There has to be a big body of volunteers, because there's like from, I think the first volunteer gets there at 7 and they do cooking and things, and then the afternoon volunteers come. No. Yeah. As I say, this is the absolute beauty of this hospice. There are absolutely no rules. They do like a doctor to refer, but they have their own doctors too. Or it can be, like recently a friend of mine passed away at Wedgetail, and she was referred to by her palliative care nurse. So, and usually people come up and have a look first. And yeah, well, I mean, like, it's a bit of a fast turnover. Some people, I have seen, like, well, one particular miracle that I saw, which I can talk to you about if you like. So a fellow came in, and he was a homeless, poor man, and he had a fungating tumour on his head, cancerous, and the community nurses couldn't cope with him anymore, and no one could, and the smell was just horrific. And this poor man came in, and we dressed his. You had to have masks, and it was just terrible. And his wound, it was dressed like up there, like a camel's hump on his head, and so he didn't have anywhere else to go but Wedgetail, and he hadn't eaten, and he used from here. A beautiful woman from here was providing him freely with medicinal cannabis, so he kept that going. In fact, I took it into him, and but he was there for about 7 or 8 weeks, and we thought he was there and he'd last 2 days, and his tumour visibly shrank. It's to the point where the last time I dressed it, it was just like, just close to the head dressing. And we really believed that it was just the love and the care, and that he could relax, and he didn't have any stress, he belonged, and people didn't shun him because he smelled. We came in, and it was the most beautiful thing to watch. And then we had the problem of that, well, he's obviously going to keep living, so we have to find something for him. We can't put him back in the street. So then there was a whole thing, and he was found a house, and it's just the most beautiful place of passage, Wedgetail.
I have 2 questions. One is there a daily charge to be there, or is it by donation from the point of view of the residents as well? And the second question is, I imagine if there's not a huge cost and if people do take quite a long time to die, there'd be people who are dying while they're on the waiting list. There'd be a long waiting list for only 4 rooms. Would that be right?
Well, so to answer your first question, there's no cost. It is donation only. And then, you know, some people, they might, you know, bequeath a car or something like that, which can get... So the whole thing just keeps running. And there is the palliative care op shop. So that supports Wedgetail financially. The second question, there are quite a few people who, if they are on the waiting list, and so a bed might be available for 2 days or something, you know. They're going to come in for respite too. People can come for respite. And it is, you know, I mean, people get in. There's not many that don't. We did, you know, in my time there was one person that passed away before he got to come to Wedgetail. No more questions?
This is my daughter Jane, and she has a choir that sings to people who are dying, and I thought you might like to tell us about it.
Yeah, that would be very, very welcome. I think.
So I live in Ballina, and just before COVID hit us, I started a local chapter of the Threshold Choir, which is actually a worldwide now organisation, but it was started maybe 25 years ago in America, and so there'll be a choir of, a lot of the choirs only have maybe 15 members, but you would only go to people's bedsides 3 at a time. So we sing songs that are specifically written for the purpose. They're not like sing-alongs. And so we sing in 3-part harmony, and we sing to people in their own homes or in facilities or in hospitals when they're unwell or dying. And it's a very peaceful, calming, lullaby-type music that you would sing. And I found it to be immensely gratifying. And often the people who are most moved by it are the families. So you'll go in to sing to somebody and their families are there, and their families have been keeping control for their mother or their father or their family member, and then they watch them, they experience you singing to them, and they see that maybe some relaxation, and they just sob, and then it's really hard to keep singing because of the effect that it has on family members. But it's immensely gratifying, and we're always looking for new members if anybody wants to come down to Ballina once a week, and if anyone's interested in starting a local chapter, I'm happy to give you any information. There's a choir in Brisbane, there's one in Mullaney, a couple in Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, and around the world. It's a great thing to do.
I don't have any more to say, except we're sort of some point soon going to try to embark on getting a similar hospice here in Nimbin. And yeah, and from wherever you are, I really encourage you. Every town should have a hospice, and it's part of the community, and people shouldn't have to go into hospital when they don't need to. And there's a lot of help. There's a whole Facebook page, and if anybody does, is interested, there's a lot of support around you. And I also encourage it to be on a government-free basis.
Thank you, Louis. That's great. Thank you, Darren. And another thing too, there's a guy a lot of you know, called John Paul Bell, and he was at the original Aquarius Festival. He's an amazing mime artist, and he was going to be here, but he just, had to go away at the wrong time. But I just say that because he started Clown Doctors, and nowadays what he's doing is he's going and sitting with dying people and their families and recording their stories. And they're really enjoying that, you know, getting to be recognised for who they are and acknowledged for who they are and recorded for their families and all that. And I mean, it's such an easy thing to do, really, to go and sit with someone with a tape recorder of some kind. So I can suggest that too. And Apana, who's joined us to my left, Judy Apana, she trains the volunteers.
As Louise was speaking, I have a long history with Wedgetail. The volunteers who work at Wedgetail are from a community group called Tweed Palliative Support, and they started in the 90s. My memory is really bad these days. However, I remember being invited to be part of the training for the volunteers, and that was in the 90s. And the building of Wedgetail was built by a woman, Meredith, that Louise mentioned, and she was a nurse. And so it's a purpose-built hospice building, which is really wonderful. And she sold it, and then the Tweed Palliative Support Service bought it. And it is really a wonderful initiative because it's completely community run and owned, and including the op shop and many other people. People are encouraged to leave money in their wills and so forth. So very much like Nimbin, in the sense that it's really a community facility. No government. The volunteers are a really mixed bag of people. It wasn't just sort of the new settlers or anything. It was everyone in Murwillumbah got involved from all different parts of the community. And as I say, that it's at least 20 years or 15 to 20 years that's been going. So I would definitely encourage and reiterate what Louise said. If every town had its own hospice, and it doesn't need to be enormous. In Holland, they have just houses in villages and so forth. It's not a great big building that people have to go and relocate to. It's more like a home that is set up as a hospice, and my dream would be to see one in every town.
Thank you. Ray wanted to talk before this session even started, so I might pass this to Ray. Can you get it, Ray? Or somebody?
Okay, sorry. I just wanted to ask a question about the volunteers at the Eagle Wedgetail, sorry. Yeah. I know there's an eagle there somewhere, Wedgetail. I think it's great. I used to work at Hopewell Hospice up in Arundel. So the volunteers do all the nursing care, do they? The RN is on. Yeah, I just wondered whether the volunteers do help with the nursing care or just the RN. An RN, yeah. Oh, I think it's great. Yeah, I think it's terrific.
Thanks, Jenny. My arrangement with Jenny was to introduce after we came in. Jenny, I'm suggesting that I move rapidly to deeper ways of dying instead of an intro. Is that all right? Okay. you will get tears from me. I accept it. I invite you to do the same. My beloved partner of 22 and a half years went into hospital, was okay for half a day, and then the injuries caught up with her, shall we say. And after 2 weeks in hospital, she was ready to go home, and then the barriers came up from the hospital about she couldn't possibly go home, etc. It was another 2 weeks before I got her home, and that final 2 weeks out of the 4, I believe, killed her. So she died 2 weeks after I got her home. My invitation to anyone in a situation similar is to think laterally. Do not be cowed by the rules the hospital wishes to impose. I know they have some legal rights, if that's the word, but I was as persuasive as I could be. We got her home. She died quite unexpectedly. The ambulance came rapidly to the wrong house, but they came. Shortly as they left, I decided that she needed a change of clothes. So they left, but Jennifer stayed with me. I decided she needed a change of clothes. And let's just say that I was conscious that at 7 a.m., which was 20 minutes' time, the rubbish truck was due. And I took advantage of that. So by the time that truck had been, Jennifer was fully respectable and ready for anything. Unfortunately, deceased. I switched on the air conditioner full low, because there was an air conditioner in the room. And I sent an SMS to my son, who didn't talk to me at that time, saying, I need your support, please ring. He came for the whole day. Others came as well, including his mother. And many people came during the day, and there were so many people in the room. I still had Jennifer there. I was holding her hand. Many people came. There were so many people in the room at one stage, I decided they didn't need me at all. So I went out for some flowers and sunshine. Some friends during the day did persuade me that it wasn't a good idea to continue keeping Jennifer there, and at 6 o'clock that evening, I permitted some people to take her. And one friend, meantime, friend of hers, said, would you like me to stay the night? And I said yes. And we went for a walk, and then that friend stayed the night, and things moved on. I had numerous visits to the hospital at my request. In the next 3 weeks, I went to 5 different meetings at the hospital, explaining to them what could have been better. I laid no blame. I had no anger. I fully accepted my own failures in the situation as well. There were a number of things I failed to achieve, and I accepted that. I want to go directly now to what I would like to bring to deeper ways of dying, as I would call this part of the session. In my wanting to come to Nimbin, I haven't been here for 50 years, I had no idea there would be sessions about death, but I was aware that people with whom I spent time 50 years ago here will have had very different experiences, as each of us does in our life, but that we might reach common ground on deep and important things. For me, in recent weeks, I've been very conscious that death, I'll start again. For me, in recent weeks, I've been very conscious that life, to me and to my logic, could not possibly be anything other than a continuum with death. Now, in a brief discussion with Layla this morning, she said, oh, Western society, Western culture doesn't do death well. And my visual was that there is life and death in the Western cultural sense. Whereas I was newly seeking to see what is it that life needs to be to go on into death as part of a continuum. And so for me, in my life, I'm not 21 either, although I've gained a lot of youth revisiting by coming here after 50 years. But it's that continuum that I'm feeling quite strongly, and because I was able to articulate it, I offered to do so.
Fantuzzi might be in the lineup now.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to start with my grandma dying. I was 19 years old, and I was ready to start traveling worldwide. I had traveled every single state 3 times without a dollar in my pocket, and I was done with America. I needed something different. So I bought a plane ticket, to make a long story short, and just the day that I came to say goodbye to my mother, she tells me that Grandma was dead. And I felt like it was Grandma leaving her soul, her spirit, to guide me or protect me, because I was very, very close with her. But I had no feeling of sorrow. And I'm not trying to say that anybody should try to be like me. It's not it's all you. Every life it lives has to live it the way they feel it. But I understood that Grandma, though she was only 62 years old, was already senile and couldn't lift up a pot to cook or, clean the clothes, which was her passion. She was just there for us, to help us. But she couldn't do any of that, but just like kind of be in the side going, blah, 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 blah. And I thought, that's not right for Grandma, It's got to be better than that. And I accepted her like that. But when I was told that she died, I had to put my head down because my whole family was there to report it to me, to grieve together. But I put my head down and I immediately said, thank you, Father, for taking her now. Now she's in your hands. And then I put on a sad face for them, because that's the way they do it. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I just understood, even at 19 years old, that there was something better for her than to be like that. Because the whole family was not so happy with that situation, and I'm sure she wasn't either. So the last thing I will say, because there's 100 other situations like that, but because you guys are talking about deeper ways of death, or I might call it deeper ways to die. I might have mentioned this, I don't know if you heard it, but I'm looking to get healthier, more wise, more compassionate, stronger, more flexible even, if I can. That's not easy, but I feel I am in certain ways. But why do we have to die like Grandma died? We could die like royally. We could die, or for me, anyway. Again, I'm not asking you to follow steps. I'm feeling that my death is coming soon because I snuck 25 lives into this one. And I don't want to be greedy, you know? So I figured all these yogis, they don't eat. The yogis, they die in a lotus position. And they don't even stink. You could keep them around without turning on the refrigerator, without them stinking. I mean, if you read stories about, what was his name? Plenty of yogis like that. Yogananda, thank you very much. Plenty of stories like that. So not thinking that I'm anybody in the level of these beings, but I know that there's just ways of going that have more grace than ending up in the hospital and making all of my children and all of my grandchildren all miserable and feel sorry for me, you know? I want to go blazing in the light with taking deeper, slower breaths till there's no more breath, and I'm going up the top of my head. And I'll see you there. Thank you.
Another part of this for us was like losing a 13-month-old baby. Mira always says that everything is perfect. And in a way, you have to find the perfection in things. It's a journey of finding what the perfection is in it, how to make sense of it. And in our case, you know, no one could really work out how we could make any sense of it. It was a beautiful, beautiful sunny day in April when she died. Not a lot of sense in any of it, the accident, anything. Nothing made sense. But when I thought about it, and we both thought about it long and hard, it made sense in this way, that she was a bit sort of, I won't say insecure, but she loved to be hugged and cuddled, and she wouldn't let me put her down, and all of that. She was like that from the beginning to the end. In fact, I thought, a baby's really this passionate. This is a bit of a worry. And so 2 weeks before she died, we were in Sydney. Paul was making a film on work for Film Australia, and he brought home a great big huge box of grapes. And I thought, I better blend up all those grapes because we're not going to be able to use them in this household before they're finished, and so I didn't want to waste them. And she wouldn't let me put her down, and I couldn't work the blender and the grapes and everything with only one hand. So I just sort of said to her, look, sometimes I'm going to have to put you down. So I'm going to take you to the next room, I'm going to give you heaps of toys, a bit of food, blah, blah, blah. This is what I've got to do. So you have to be self-contained because now is the moment you've got to really learn that. So I put her down in the next room. I gave her the food. I gave her everything. Happy as Larry. Not a squeak. Not a squeak. And then when I did pick her up and give her a cuddle, from that moment on, she was really different. She went to anybody. She slept in any bed. She was just totally and utterly, completely self-sufficient and fine, and everything was hunky-dory, like she hadn't really been like that. So in my opinion, she came here for that little 13-month-old life to learn that, to learn to be self-contained, to learn to be happy with herself, to learn to take things when they came rather than to have them. You know, I could see the lessons that were in her little life that she learned. That was all she had to do. So, okay, I really missed her. We both missed her so much physically. But at a spiritual level, I felt incredibly blessed to feel like there was a spiritual and you know, that I could see things that made sense of it and made it somehow perfect in its own horrible way. And I bless Mira for that, because I've you know, Paul and I have really stuck by that thing that everything is perfect. it's a really tough one, but it's a very interesting thing to ponder. So I just share that with you because later on, not very long after that, we had another friend who had a 3-year-old who had the most rare form of cancer and died. And they didn't want to hurt this little girl, but then they had to give her morphine, and it was just ghastly, the whole thing. Anyway, the mum didn't really have any spiritual background at all, and she was a medical statistician. So she wrote in her book every day after the death of this child for months and months and months what she could have done that caused it. And she sent herself stark raving mad, really. And her father died during this time too, and she ended up going back to Switzerland, and our friend was the father of the child, and it broke them up. And anyway, I just give blessings for having some form of spirit in my life because it really does get you through those hard times, no matter what that spirit is.
Just reflecting on what the two gentlemen, Fantuzzi and Ray, talked about when people die, and I just wanted to, I was remembering actually when you were speaking that I was with a young man, I say young, he was in his early 30s, when he was dying, and we talked about dying before. However, as his death was approaching, he became quite scared. And he said to me, you know, what happens after death? And I just looked at him and said, well, I don't know because I don't remember dying. However, I repeated what some of the great masters say, and that is that when we die, we wake up and realise that this has been the dream. And the look on his face and the smile that I got from him in that moment will stay with me forever. And it's a nice thing to remember. We don't know, however, maybe this is the dream, and that when we die, we wake up. She wants me to give it to you.
You want me to say something? Like what? Yeah.
So my name's Jordan. I'm not from Nimbin, but I've come for Aquarius. I'm loosely guessing I'm the youngest person in the room, so in the nicest way. And so I've worked in end of life for the past 4.5 years, and I'm an end of life doula, funeral director, all of those things. And what I would like to suggest is this conversation. The sharing is profound, and I deeply appreciate the so many different aspects of life and stages of life that have been shared. But what I might say is, how many people have written down what they'd like to happen to their bodies and told their families or the friends or the people who will look after them? Yeah, I feel like that's an important thing to acknowledge, because I know for myself that that will be the case. I've got older sisters, my parents, some of my grandparents. Yeah, it's a role that I know that I'll have to take on, and I've witnessed that time and time again, where it's a conversation that is so powerful in this space, but it needs to be translated a little bit beyond, so then the people left to hold that are really on the same page. You know, even knowing deep inside what you feel like will happen to your soul or your spirit, or if you don't feel like anything will happen, it's so nurturing to walk away from that. And the sharing in this space is so powerful, but I feel like it's important as an invitation to take that a little bit beyond, you know, as aging and unexpected things happen. I mean, I'm only 23, so I'm in a demographic as a young man that's high risk too, so I don't think it's specifically age related, but yeah, I feel like that's an important thing. And I do want to touch on what you said with, you know, it could be that when we die there's a dream. It's a dream and we wake up. But there's also something really amazing, the parallels between birth and death as well. Like if you know, I'm saying this as a young man, so I don't know that sensation, but you know, the idea, if a baby's in utero, they don't know what's going to happen when they're born. They're inside, they're in their own cocoon, in their own world. And, you know, that's a form of life entering the world, but it's also a death of that experience happening inside, entering into something else. So I've heard that said. I don't know how that resonates for me, but I find that a really beautiful image, that death could be that birth into something else. And there's some incredible parallels between what happens. So that's, yeah.
Can I? Oh, sorry.
Hi, my name's Marita, and death has been with me my whole life, profoundly. And one of my passions has been to bring it into the conversation within your families, within your homes, within the community, rather than having it as this unspokenness with it. I have it on good hearsay that one of the Monty Python crew was writing a musical called Death the Musical, and Broadway would not accept it because of well, the sales won't be that great. And, you know, who wants to go to something like that? You know, and of course he was going to make, not light, but, you know, sort of bring it into a comedic light, but also bring out the conversation of it. You know, it's really, for me, it's just been with me my whole life. My very best friend died horrifically when I was 5 years old. And it kind of instilled and ingrained in me an experience, because I was sort of not allowed to go to his farewell. And I had a sort of the Irish intuitive fairness that I knew little Johnny wasn't long for this world anyway. And but I remember the rage that I felt that I was not allowed to go. And but in my own way, I interrogated all my relatives with ferocious intent when they all came home. And it was almost like I felt that I was sort of almost a guardian angel for him. I wanted to know about the box that was in his, you know, his suit, and did they put the tie on, did they put the bow and arrow in it? And I remember just seeing all these adults in my world just quite horrified, because I didn't know how to deal with my nature then, you know, because I was just, it wasn't the fact that he died, but as he's going to be looked after, you're going to take care of him. So that was kind of like, that takes me from that to, I've done hospice care work. I've been at many friends' moments of transition, that I call it, death and dying. And to me, it is birth. It's a similar thing of coming in. Because I remember reading years ago, it might have been with the Satyananda mob, that, you know, a lot of the Hindus cry at birth, you know, because we're back in these mortal beings. And they rejoice when we leave. They say, woo, you know, going back to the source, or whatever you want to call it. But for me, it's to having those conversations with people. I was leading a panel at the Woodford Folk Festival back in 2019 under a lovely heading of Midwife for the Afterlife, which a friend gave me after I had an incredibly auspicious experience with my older brother's passing. And I probably won't go into the details of it now, yet it took all fear away from me of what the experience is. And for that, and he told me we're very telepathic in our family, and it was the last gift that he gave me, which was extraordinary. And but on the panel we talked about even addressing at any stage of your life what you want. Have you got a will? You know, like a lot of people sort of go, oh, even a lot of my contemporaries, I'm in my mid-60s, go, oh, no, I haven't done that yet. So, or have you let someone know of your intentions, of what you would like, and literally write down to the nitty-gritty details. I think it's a really good, it's valuable, and it's really, really important. But for me, I come from a creative arts background as well. And death came to me, or the personification of death came to me in a meditation one day. And it was a male character, very strong vision. And he was kind of like a cross between a Mormon and the Blues Brother. And death was standing at my front door. I know, he was very emancipated within himself. There was this, translucent body, very lean, very sad, very neglected. And I looked at death and I said, how can I help you in my meditation? And the reply was, nobody loves me. And I looked at death and I went, I do. And I invited the character in for tea. This was this whole meditation. And so I invited the character in for tea. We sat and we partook in the simple ritual of having a cup of tea with each other and getting to know each other. And when I came out of the meditation, I thought, oh, there's a play, there's something I could do of, like The Midwife of the Afterlife, of meeting death and fear, of running, and just all these different personifications of emotions. And it's still okay to have it, but it's like anything of the unknown if one can spend some time with the familiarity of it and befriend it. Befriend even the fear. Make it your very best friend as best as possible. And anyway, so that's kind of like my passion of that. And dear old death, I had to sort of, I let him go. But I said, don't worry, it'll get better. We'll start talking about you. We'll bring the conversation more out into community. And I mean, I know there's so many different cultures that have a lot more understanding or in depth, but it's still the elephant in the room, I feel, And I loved what you said about singing to people, because it made me think of a babe, that we sing lullabies to. Instantaneously you start humming and rocking. And for me, the journey of coming into the world, you take a breath is the first thing, umbilicals cut. Last thing we do is the last breath that goes. So it's sort of like that. And I remember I was given that gift when I was 21, and I was working with in aged care, and I was with a beautiful older woman, and she breathed out and didn't breathe in. It was a really, really peaceful death. And I was so excited of sort of being humbled and yet gifted with this extraordinary experience. I went home to my share household, and we were sort of all in our early 20s and a bit sort of outrageous and whatever. And I was so excited. How was work today, Marita? Oh, wow, I was at the presence of someone dying. It was and I went in, I was so joyous, and it cleared the lounge room. And I remember just sitting there going, oh, what did I say? That's many, many decades ago now. But I wondered, I thought, wow, was it that offensive? And then I realised that it wasn't a conversation that was allowed to be had, or had to be had, or I don't know. But it's really fabulous having forums like this and having people being able to share the intimacy of birth and the intimacy of death is absolutely profound. And if you've had that experience, or you can be with whoever, I would really, really encourage it, because it's life-changing. It's literally life-changing. And and so much can be had around it. And also empowering people to say, you can do whatever you so choose, whatever ritual, whatever celebration of life, whatever. Even my parents, after seeing what happened with my brother's death, he was cremated, and we threw him off the ashes, that is not him, off North Clovelly down in Sydney, because that was our, as Indigenous folk have their spirit home and country, our country was there, or our connectedness to nature and the planet. And when Mum and Dad saw the ritual that we went through with Jack, they both changed their whole way of wanting to do what they did when they died. They said, we want to do exactly the same. And they were quite staunch Catholics, and cremation is not really a go-to. But they said, no, bugger that, burn us and put us out with our beautiful son. So it's sort of those opportunities that come to just bring the conversation, if one can be. And last thing I'll add is the gifts I was given when I was doing hospice care on the Sunshine Coast through Chinamani is, I think because when you're a neutral person with someone, you know, you're not an immediate relative, that the stories that are told and the one, you know, to be recorded is just to be acknowledged and recognised. And often it would open with, I've never told anybody else this before. And you knew it was this wonderful space of stories and the sharing and the caring. So for me, it's sort of befriending the elephant in the room or death, of whatever that perspective is for you, and opening up conversations and being with it. Because it's, as the old Monty Python crew said too, none of us are getting out of this alive. You know, and it's just beautiful. I find it beautiful. And I've been told by many funeral directors, "Go, you'd be really good at this business." But yeah, I've touched in on lots of it and had many conversations about it. So I just really honour and congratulate everyone that's here, that's listening and sharing and caring and profoundly making it a space and a place that it's okay. So thank you.
Who was it? Spike Milligan has on his tombstone, "See, I told you I was sick."
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, from the spiritual depths, I think that science, like always, is taking a long time to keep up. You've been quite saying like the peacefulness of death, and I only last week read that during birth, oxytocin is made in your body, and it gives you trust and love. But the same amount, if sometimes not more, is made when you die and when you're present with those dying. So that feeling of unconditional love is proven in the laboratories now also. And I've heard it from end-of-life people, that you feel like what you say, that when you come out, I was with somebody who died. I think with losing a child is different. There's, you know, but with people who died at deaths in age. Before I go, I want to say that Louise is talking about that hospice in every village. It's not there yet. And while doing this booklet, I've been talking with a lot of people, especially the people who care in the moment for people who are dying. And the palliative care nurse, Helen, here, very busy. And I only know the figures from the Netherlands, but people go into aged care because 70% of the carers have burnout. And because the core carer has burnout, the person goes into a care home. I don't think Australia is that much different. So people here now caring for dying people are very stressed. They love what they're doing, but they're also very stressed. And I, out of the Nimbin Death and Dying, want to revive it by setting up a volunteer group, somewhere ending hopefully like Wedgetail, but a group of people that want to sit with people who are dying, even just companion, and support the professionals, the death doulas, the end of care life, the palliative care, the doctors, the medical system, to maybe make some food for them, maybe do the garden, because nobody can do the garden in it. And Louise is one of them. There's 5 ex-nurses already who don't mind to go and help the family wash the body when people have died and they can stay at home. So anybody from Nimbin, you want to be part of it, not yet committing, but want to, how do you say that? Yeah, check it out, or maybe do it, maybe. If you see me in the street, please give your name and address, and then when the time, June, July, when we set up that group and have a group and start, brainstorming about it, how we can set it up on a voluntary base, supporting the professionals. And you've seen the hippies in the street. I'm like 71, but there's a lot of 80, 85-year-old, and these hippies will die, like everybody, but we need to look after each other, I think. Death and Beyond, run by Fantastic Terrain Baits, is a beautiful Facebook page. She brings all that new stuff, how they do it, the latest they do in Holland, the latest they do in Brazil, the latest, and everything coming back to community, and we can do it, and how can we empower each other. And it's called Nimben, Death and Beyond.
Great. Can I just say,
Died. Yes, it died.
My name's Colin. Whilst everyone's been sharing, I've been having a lovely image of death in community, really. An image of a pebble going into a pond and ripples coming out, going in, and crossing over, affecting each and every one of us. And so I just wanted to acknowledge a couple of tangential aspects, perhaps. We're from down south. When the horrific fires were touching on this area and working their way all the way down the ranges, I don't think there's any way of simply speaking the feelings that we, and I know all of you, would have had seeing that coming and knowing the results of that and the impacts on the natural environment and how that dying affects all of us intimately. So that's one aspect, the natural world and how we deal with death and dying on that level. And I also wanted to acknowledge in our area, in the 2 or 3 years since, just extra people dying who wouldn't have normally passed on, one would think. But broken hearts, people living in the forest, homemade houses, healers, people following spiritual paths. I don't know, for them, was it, that's enough now, I can go, I can let go, or was it, this is just too much, it's time for me to give up and go. So that's an acknowledgement of within the dying and within the spiritual moving on. Somehow we also do the death and dying process, the grieving processes that are involved in that.
Great. Just recently I heard on Radio National a discussion about whether consciousness goes beyond the last breath. Well, I always have felt it did, and I think as part of being there with the death, with dying, helping support dying friends, one should remember that, to keep that space, holy and sacred, not just from if you're in the hospital being told, oh, well, it's all over. Often it isn't. I had a very difficult relationship with my mother, and I was living in Bali, and I got this message, if you don't come now, you won't see her. So I flew there immediately, and when I got there, she said, I've been waiting for you, and she borrowed my pashmina shawl and got better. But then later I got this message again, and it was from the hospital. It was nighttime. They said, you know, your mother's, she is probably organs are failing. And I said, would I get there in time? And they said, no. I said, can I speak to her? Well, no, if she can't hear me, if she can't hear us, she won't be able to hear you. So then my niece, who was very close to my mother, rang me and said, I want to take her out of the hospital. They won't let me take her. And I said, oh, Karen, do something for me. Would you put the phone next to Mum's ear, because the staff won't? And she did that, and I told my mother all those things that I was grateful for. At the end, I said, you can really relax now, Mom. You know, you're going to see Dad and all your close friends. I said, you could just let go. Why not just take a big breath and let go? Then my niece came on the phone and said, what did you say to Grandma? She just took this big, deep breath and died. So I think it's really important to remember and to trust your own ceremonies. Tante and I had been involved in Tibetan Buddhism at one period, and we'd studied at the Tibetan Medical Center in 1974. But since then, by that time with Papaji, I wasn't really following Tibetan practices. But when Tanten died, then it was like, I just felt that I had to respect the Bardo estates. And so I slept in a bed by the altar where I had his photographs and my master's photographs, candles going all the time, and Tibetan chants. It just came to me to do that, and I did it for 40, how many days? 49 days. And then at the end of that, it was kind of interesting because he died about 2 in the morning. And that night just happened that Judy, I think, was there, and Jane and Nadia turned up in her pajamas. Suddenly there was this little group, and we were sitting there chanting, and I had the distinct feeling of something going. You know, not that I'd know what was going on, but there was this, I felt he was there, but I felt he'd gone. But just doing what felt good for me was very nourishing, really. It was super nourishing. So I don't know, but I just think it's important to remember that the last breath is not necessarily the end of consciousness.
Just to follow on from what Mira was talking about, the one thing that came to me is to trust what your knowing and feeling is, that we all know how to die, and we will all die successfully. And when you're with someone who is dying, whatever impulses come up, to really trust that, because we all have inner wisdom and we all know what to do, and not to let, you know, fear or concepts in the way. But according to the Tibetan understanding of dying is that it is, and Tenzin Chogyal did the Bardo Tibetan Book of the Dying, I believe, this morning, is that death is a process. In the West, we say that when respiration stops, that's the time of death. However, from a Tibetan Buddhist understanding, it is a process. It can start up to a week before the person takes their last breath, and it is that the elements of earth, air, fire, water, and ether, one by one, dissolve into the central channel. And if you're with someone who's dying, you can tell when the dying process starts. And according to the Tibetan tradition, once that process starts, it's irreversible. And the first element to start to dissolve is the earth element, And as the earth element starts to dissolve into the central channel, the sensation of the sheets being very heavy happens. And often, and I've taught many doctors and nurses who've come to seminars I've done over the years, when I describe this, they all start nodding their heads because they've actually seen this happen. But this is the sort of explanation. So when the person who's dying starts to feel that the sheets are very heavy, and often they'll want to take their clothes off, that is the beginning of the dying process. And from that moment on, it's irreversible. And then, so the earth element dissolves, then the water element dissolves, and the people will get very thirsty, and you may just want to wet their lips or something to make us feel more comfortable. So as the elements start to dissolve, and the final one, well, the last element is the air element when the last breath is taken, and then there's the element of space or ether. So after the person has stopped breathing, and anyone who's been with someone after they've died, there is a palpable sense that they're still there. You know, you look down and you think, did I just see them breathe? Or, you know, but you know, yes, that they've, however, it's a very strong sense, and it's sort of like their consciousness fills the whole room. And we never know how long that process will go for, and this is where trust comes in, that you may need to go out. Often, if it's a hospital or a hospice, I check before the person dies, how long have we got? You know, and I always say it's our religious belief, and please don't move the person, and how long have we got before you can move the body? And often they're very accommodating. But sometimes you need to leave the room to go and whatever, and you come back in and they're gone. It's just like a shell lying in the bed. But that can also take longer as well, so we never really know. And this is where trusting our own inner wisdom, I think, is really important. That what you're feeling and perceiving is correct, rather than what the books say, or what you've learned, or what the doctors are saying, or the nurses who actually want to tip you out of the room. So if you are being with a loved one in hospital, try to talk to the staff and explain that you do need some time after the person has stopped breathing. I think that's it from me. It really depends on where the person dies. If they're in a hospice, then you've got a lot of time. If they die at home, you don't call an ambulance. Don't call anybody, just because this is the time you have with them. And then once you ring a funeral director or a doctor or whoever, all that's gone. They come barging through the door, and you've lost that wonderful opportunity to be with your loved one.
Hello, world. Oh, God, what was I saying? Yeah, my mother died last year, and I knew that I was afraid that they were going to slice her open and suck her guts out, because they got a vacuum cleaner. They generally suck the guts out to cremate the body, and they change all the fluids out of the body, and that's an incredible disturbance. But if you just... Can I just challenge you on that? That's just completely untrue. Right. Yeah, that's just, I can explain that process, but that is absolutely not Are you a mortuary?
Sorry, I do just want to dispel that immediately because that is very much not the case. So my background, I've worked, I've supported tender funerals and I've been in the mortuary there. It's a beautiful organisation as a volunteer and funeral assistant. So when someone's cremated, the only thing that is really important is that if they've got a pacemaker that's got a battery, and that has to come out because if that explodes in the crematorium, it's just not a nice process. But there's no other body interference that needs to happen. Some people have their features set so that their eyes... So presentation of a corpse, your guts don't get sucked out. There's a process called embalming where they might put formaldehyde and other fluids, and then some places, for whatever reason, so it sort of sounds a bit Egyptian and mummification, taking all the guts out, but in a standard process to preserve the body a little bit longer, there's just some chemicals that go in, and that's just to slow decomposition, but it doesn't mean it stops. And there's... Yeah, it's not standard practice in Australia. So if you're being put in a vault in the wall or sent overseas, sometimes those practices are important, but standardly that's not something that would happen without consent. And that's, if this is going out to the world, funeral directors watching, make sure there's consent for those sorts of activities. No, unfortunately movies paint a very different picture of what happens in reality.
Next Saturday, and she's a really well-known lady from Byron Bay, is it Zenith? Yes. So there's a funeral and all different types of, how you want to go, how you want to end, and they give you all of the, I think, the mortuarists and also funeral directors and coffins, and there's an expo. So it's at the Ocean Shores Community Centre, I think between 10 and 2. Yes, that's right. And there's two things I wanted to share. I was horrified when I found out that some of the, when they burn you through the cremation, it's some of the most toxic greenhouse stuff that goes out there. And if everyone thought that they were saving space in the earth by getting burnt, nah. But then in California, they have invented, just this year I heard Radio National also, you can get put in a box and completely composted, and even the bones somehow, I don't know if they take them out after a certain amount of process, but now we can get given back to the earth, not just as ash, but the whole lot. And I thought that was a really good movement forward. And, the old people, or the hospice, I would like it, between the hospice is a garden to the preschool, and the preschool kiddies can run over to the old people, and the old people can see the kiddies. And those places in Europe that I've seen, they're so beautiful, bringing the old people with the babies together. Thank you.
Time, Jen?
Hello, my name's Wally. I've been involved in death for a very long time. My father was a war veteran, and when he came home with all the atrocities and everything built in him. As a little fella, I had to live through all of that, and it was really hard, but it made me strong, and that's what he wanted. He wanted me to be strong. I've worked in so many different hospitals. I've worked in psychiatric hospitals, base hospitals, general hospitals, and right through I've experienced a fair bit of death, but I've also experienced the life. My father wanted to show me everything, so we started in a psych, well, I didn't start, but we went to a psych hospital. He was a fire warden, and he had to pick up people that had passed away in the geriatric wards, and for a joke,
bit more strongly.
Okay, thank you. But for a joke, they decided that they were going to put a patient through as deceased and get my father to pick him up and take him to the morgue. And so my father went and picked up this person that he knew he was dying. So he went to pick him up and he picked up the person. And as he was driving the car to the morgue, the person sat up. And it was the first time my father ever said, you know, through all the atrocity that he had in the Vietnam and that, he says the first time that he's ever ran away from someone. But anyway, back to the point. My mother was dying of cancer, and I got one day call from here, and she said, "Son, I'm dying of cancer." I says, "Okay, Mum, I'm coming home." And I go home, and you know, she's fine. I said, "Oh, okay." And she's doing the radiology and all of that, but it's terminal. You know, she's definitely dying. And I said, okay, you know, so I left work and everything and went there and spent 3 months at home. And, you know, she's going good. And I said, "Mum, I've got to go back to work." And she says, "Yeah, that's all right, son. Yeah, you go back. And when I feel like I'm ready, I'll give you a call." I says, "Okay, Mum." You know, so I come back to work and I'm working, and it was the most worst thing I've ever done, ever felt. You know, because I had to pay. I had to get paid to pay the debts and that. And anyway, 3 months later, she rang up. She says, "Son, I'm ready to go." I says, "Okay, Mum. Yeah, I'm coming home." So I go home, and there she is. She's all happy and everything. I'm still, yes, that's good. I says, "Yeah, how you going, Mum?" She says, "Oh, I got heaps of time yet. I just wanted to see you." I says, "Oh, thanks, Mum." You know, and at that time, I believed that I was called back a second time, you know, for everything else, but I had to go and get something for her from my dad. And when I travelled up there, I've been travelling this road for many years of my life, but I never noticed this mountain. And I just got this sudden urge just to drive to this mountain. I don't know how to get to it or anything. I just drove. And I come across a path in the mirror. I turned around a corner and there was a footpath that I spotted in my mirror. So I drove the car up it because it was heading towards the mountain. And I got to the mountain and realised it was only a footpath. That what I was driving on was actually bush and the footpath. So the car was kind of going like this. Anyway, to get to that point, I got to this place and I gave an offering because it looked very sacred. So I gave an offering and I started walking up there and I come across these caves. And I went down into a cave and it was a burial site. It was a burial site for, you know, a dead person that was old, really, really old. And there was another one that was up at the other side, so I went and had a look at that. And yeah, it was, you know, fantastic. But yeah, going off the point, sorry. I come back home, I got what I needed, I come back home and I gave it to Mum and I said, you know, I've got to go back to work, Mum. You know, it's another 3 months. So I went back to work and then the third time, my mother called and says, "Son, you know, I'm nearly going." I said, "Okay, Mum." So I went back. And when I walked into the house, it was shocking. You know, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say, like we all do, and well, most people. The second time that I went back, she asked me a question. And the question was, would you help me? Would you help me? I says, "Mum, what would you want? I'll help you with anything."
And she says, could you end me? And my father's, you know, like, she's watching it all, and my father's, you know, ampered about training and how to, you know, kill people. I said, no, I can't. You know, I can't do that, Mum. I can't do that to you. And I know the suffering that she's going to suffer. And on the third time when I got back, it was, words just can't describe how I felt. But what the sight was that it was a dying sight, that, you know, she was there, nothing else. It was just her dying. And, you know, why? I asked myself why. I never put something on that she loved. She loved Elvis Presley, you know. Put Elvis Presley on. She loves watching her movies. She loved making movies, and she made so many movies of the family. And I was thinking, why didn't I put that on? Why didn't I do more for her than I could? And I think that's the most saddest part in my life, was when I could have done more, you know, more to make her happy. Yes. Thank you.
We're just about to finish, and this is a sort of a practical note. We do have a very wonderful funeral service in our local area called Sacred Earth Funerals. They have their main place in Korakai. A beautiful lady called Mimi, who is like an angel, bought an old church in Korakai. She couldn't get permission in Lismore, but she's also opened a shop front in Lismore as well. And I have been doing, my background is I worked with people with AIDS in the 80s, so I've been going to funerals for a very long time and conducting funerals for a very long time. And we had the beautiful Nisi Pateson with us for many years, who was also an angel. And now we've got Mimi, who has a beautiful old church that she's done up, and a beautiful vigil room that families can come, and she's actually going to build accommodation so people can come and stay with their loved one. And I've taken friends there, and to watch Mimi in her compassion and care for the family and for the person who has died is breathtaking. And we are so blessed and so lucky to have Mimi as part of our community. And she was invited here today, but she's probably doing a funeral or looking after somebody's body, or she is really an angel, and she doesn't charge a lot of money. Yeah, which is very important. Yeah. Is she in Mullum? Yeah. Yeah.
Well, look, thank you all incredibly much for coming. It's been quite wonderful, really. I think it's unusual that a festival would tackle a subject like this and live to see people at the end of it. But there you are. Just want to share one. Yeah. Yes, I just want to share before Gay one little thing. Paul's sister had breast cancer, and she survived it by meeting a Navajo Indian who, between the age of 7 and 77, learned all his life from his tribe how to have the will to live. And he imparted what it meant to have the will to live to people. And it's changed and created a lot of lives instead of death. And it's a really wonderful thing to contemplate in your own life, you know, the will to live.
Thanks. I just wanted to add something just to what you said about Mimi, because I don't know her well, but I was really looking forward to seeing her. And a lot of you might know John Revington, who was very involved in the Rainforest Information Centre with Janosch, and he was someone who died at Wedgetail, and Mimi was very involved with that. But I partly say it because Kath Fisher, who was her partner, was nursing him at home on the farm, and we would gather outside and sing to him, and just somehow that, and just having that community-based farewell that she led so well, but where we painted a shroud for him and all those beautiful qualities. And I just want to thank you so much for having this session. It's been wonderful. Thanks.
Just before you go too, could you all put the chairs back over somewhere or other so they can put